This Sunday, we are beginning the first in a series of sermons that will examine the text that we all recite at the end of our Sunday morning worship service at UUCJ. I think Donna took my order of service. I was going to shake it at you all so you could see. It's on the back of it if you're a visitor today. Can I steal that? It's right here if you've never seen it before. This is our spoken affirmation we recite at the end of every service. But you know, it's actually much more than just a spoken affirmation. It's a covenant. It's a set of mutual promises that we make to one another. Now, this affirmation is not technically this congregation's membership covenant. Every member of UUCJ knows that we have a different covenant that we each accept when we choose to tie our fortunes together by officially becoming members of this church. And it is a beautiful covenant. I love the text of that covenant. But beautiful as it is, in many ways, that covenant is not as important to the life of this church as this one that appears on the back of your order of service. This covenant is one that we reaffirm every week. We regularly, we liturgically celebrate these words in the sacred space of worship that we create every Sunday morning. We pledge ourselves to these promises in a spirit of humility, vulnerability, and community, symbolically demonstrated by our willingness to hold each other's hands as we speak the words out loud in unison and to one another. Most of us have uttered these words so many times, they have been committed to memory. So although this is not UUCJ's official membership covenant, it may actually be more important to all of us than that membership covenant. Therefore, I think it behooves us all to have a better understanding about this covenant, starting with its origins. As many of you know, perhaps because of a sermon I delivered not too long ago, our spoken affirmation is derived from a covenant found in the back of our gray hymnals. It's number 471 if you're keeping score at home or in your seats this morning. And if you were to take the time to look, you'd see that the gray hymnal gives attribution to this covenant with the following words, arranged by L. Griswold Williams. So maybe you've asked yourself, who is L. Griswold Williams, and how exactly did he come up with these words? The answers to these questions, which I'll be providing today, I'd like to note, are primarily from the research of UU theologian and historian, the Reverend Alice Blair Wesley. L. Griswold Williams was the minister of the Universalist Church of Reading, Pennsylvania, back in the 1930s. His friends apparently called him Grizzy. Well, in 1933, Grizzy edited a collection of readings for church services for Murray Press. The last reading of that book was entitled A Covenant for Free Worship. But in the book, Grizzy gave no attribution for those words. 4 years later, in 1937, this covenant for free worship appeared in a new hymnal jointly published by the Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America, again, with no attribution. So when our own gray hymnal was published in 1993, the arrangement for this covenant of free worship, or number 471, was attributed to Reverend Grizzy. But Alice Blair Wesley thinks we can actually trace the origin of this covenant even further back, all the way back to the year 1883. On Sunday, April 15th, 1883, the congregation of the Unitarian Church of Quincy, Illinois, met to adopt a new covenant for their congregation. That Sunday, 58 people signed the newly crafted and adopted covenant, which read as follows. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Within a decade, the Quincy Church covenant began spreading like wildfire to other congregations. For example, in 1892, the Third Unitarian Church of Chicago published this covenant in their service book. Due to its obvious similarities to the Grizzy covenant published 40 years later, Alice Blair Wesley argues that the Quincy covenant is where our current formulation, our current spoken affirmation actually begins. And now, as Paul Harvey would say, you know the rest of the story. Or the beginning of the story, rather. The story is not yet over. Far from it. We all still have our own chapter of it to write. This morning, I'd like to begin breaking down the important elements in the first line of our affirmation: love is the doctrine of this church. Now, I already know that we all in here completely understand every nuance of the concept of love, and we all practice loving each other perfectly, so there's not much reason to spend too much time on that subject, right? And not so much. Love's an enormous concept and a hard path to walk. We could talk about love till the end of days and still barely scratch its surface. We rightly spend a great deal of our time as a church and as human beings studying and practicing love. Actually, I gave a whole sermon about this last year. If you want to, go to our YouTube channel. It's called The Origin of Love. But for this morning, there are some other really interesting words in this line of text that I want to give attention to. For example, the word doctrine. Honestly, by a show of hands, how many people in here, with no other context surrounding that word, how many people in here get maybe a little anxious when they hear the word doctrine in a UU church? Look around. Yes, thank you for your honesty. Thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's exactly the response I would expect from UUs. Absolutely. Most of us, we're a little skeptical of the concept of doctrine, because many of us come from religious backgrounds where fundamentalist doctrines were forced upon us against our wills. Many of us were compelled to accept beliefs that we didn't really believe in order to be accepted in our own previous faith communities. In these churches, the word doctrine was used as a weapon and often pointed at us. That experience, which so many of us in this room have shared, has left us rightly skeptical about the value of this word, doctrine. But let's talk a little more about this word. The word itself, doctrine, is Latin in origin. Doctrina was Latin for teaching. And it is the same root from which we derive the word doctor, which etymologically speaking simply means teacher. So at its root, there's probably nothing there that should make any of us anxious about this word doctrine. It just means teaching. We all want to be taught. UUs especially value education and learning and teaching, right? But honestly, we all know that the word doctrine has collected a bit more baggage to it over the centuries. The first entry in Collins' dictionary for doctrine reads as follows: a creed or body of teachings of a religious, political, or philosophical group presented for acceptance or belief. Dogma. Yeah. Now the UU blood in us is beginning to warm up a bit. Now we're shifting in our seats just a tad. Creed, dogma, these are four-letter words to UUs. We are proudly a creedless religion. We say it from this pulpit all the time. I say it from this pulpit. I said it this morning that we are a creedless religion. The UUA bylaws even note that we can't be a UUA member congregation if we have a creed. If you've never read it, Article 2, Section C-2.4 of the UUA bylaws reads, freedom of belief. You should read it sometime. Nothing herein shall be deemed to infringe upon the individual freedom of belief which is inherent in the Universalist and Unitarian heritage, or to conflict with any statement of purpose, covenant, or bond of union used by any congregation unless such is used as a creedal test. Pretty clear. Creeds equal bad. And we certainly don't have any creeds around here. Except when we do. I really enjoy having this conversation with long-standing UUs, people in the faith whom I greatly respect, oftentimes people in various leadership positions. I always enjoy observing the responses. I can tell you that I oftentimes can detect a subtle emotional reactivity from many of these UUs when I broach this subject, the kind of emotional reactivity that suggests we have wandered into the presence of a sacred cow, which of course makes the conversation that much more interesting for me. It's not that I like to kill sacred cows, I'm not that cruel, I just like to touch them. Sometimes really hard, You know, back in Kansas, sometimes at night, we would do this thing called cow tipping. Perhaps you've heard of it. I was a cruel young man. I don't have any pride in it now, but you know, it's when you go out at night, you find a sleeping cow and you just kind of knock them over. That's all I like to do to sacred cows. That's it. We all have sacred cows. And from time to time, it's good for them to get tipped over. So when I talk to UUs who hold tightly to the idea that we are and must ever remain creedless, my wicked little brain likes to respond, but of course we have creeds. If a creed is a list of agreed upon shared beliefs, we have that. Like any and all groups, we all have shared beliefs. If, as the dictionary suggests, the word doctrine is essentially just another word for creed, then every single week we proudly declare that this church has at least one doctrine or creed: love. That is not an empty statement. It is not mere fluff. Nor do I understand that line as mere metaphor or mere poetry. It is a real and substantive statement worthy of study, explication, and interpretation. Love is an explicit creed we all claim to share. And I believe that there are certainly other implicit beliefs that we all corporately share. These beliefs, these shared beliefs, they are embedded in our covenants. Our covenants demonstrate that we value ideals like love, justice, diversity. That means we share a belief that each of these ideals are valuable. It may not be an explicit de jure creed, but these beliefs comprise part of a de facto creed. We share all kinds of beliefs together as a community, and as open-minded and as welcoming as we rightfully strive to be. Those implicitly held corporate beliefs force us to be intolerant of certain other beliefs, words, and actions. You don't believe me? If a church member were to come to my office during the week and say, "Phillip, you know, I'm a UUCJ member. I'd like to start an adult RE class on Sunday mornings over in the Fletcher room, and the purpose of the class will be to bring together UUs who want to physically and psychologically torture small monkeys and chimpanzees for the purposes of personal pleasure." If we were truly creedless, my response would have to be, well, first, have you made a financial contribution this year? Oh, good. Well, as a member in good standing, I guess we'll reserve the room for you, because who am I to judge you, your morality, your beliefs? We're creedless UUs. Do as you will. But in real life, if someone comes to me with a request like that, I'm going to say, no, you're not torturing monkeys at our church. That's way messed up. I'm a good, open-minded UU, but I also recognize the truth in the famous advice given by G.K. Chesterton, who exhorts us all to be open-minded, but not so open-minded that our brains fall out. UUCJ may not have a line in our bylaws that says monkey torture is discouraged, but we all agree it's wrong. It's part of a non-explicit creed that we all share based on a set of values that we all hold in common. So yes, I can argue that we do in fact have a creed, or several creeds. But on the other hand, to be fair, I do get the basic idea of what people mean when they claim that UUs are creedless. What we really mean when we say that is, we don't require members to give mental or verbal assent to a set of propositions related to the objective existence or non-existence of a particular person in history, the verity, value, or consequences of his or her words or deeds, or speculative conclusions about the nature of the divine or ultimate reality. Okay, so by that definition, yes, UUism is proudly creedless. But I think it may be an overreach to suggest that we hold absolutely no corporately shared beliefs. We're not just a bunch of random people coming together on a Sunday morning simply because we have nothing better to do. So how do we concisely explain our relationship with creeds and doctrines to those unfamiliar with our faith? Should we tell outsiders that we are a creedless, doctrineless faith? Well, I think it depends on who we're talking to. That statement, that we are creedless, that we are doctrineless, it'll play very well to those who have been trapped or abused by fundamentalist creeds or doctrines of a previous religious tradition. But that statement will mean little to the unchurched, those who have never been injured by a creed or a doctrine. To those, a statement suggesting that we have no creed or no doctrine will more likely confuse than inspire. But I will say that as a general rule, I think that we as UUs should try to move away from describing ourselves as what we are not. I think we should stop touting all that we lack as compared to others. Let us take pride for all that we affirmatively possess, for all that we positively are. Let us define ourselves by what we affirm and promote, not what we disdain in others. We do have a doctrine. We proudly claim it every week. It is love. Love is what we teach. Love is what we pursue. Love is what we attempt to live. Love stands at the center of who we are as a people. It is what binds all of us, as diverse as we all are. It is what binds us all together. We are the people of love. And as the people of love, we are compelled to welcome and invite diversity. As the people of love, we are compelled to put feet to our faith by seeking to incarnate justice in this world for everyone. As the people of love, we believe in the transformative power of community, the transformative power of church. That's why I am proud to be a Unitarian Universalist. And I think the reason that so many of us have such an affinity for this affirmation is because it boldly declares to others and to ourselves exactly who we are, not who we're not. So my closing charge to you all this morning is this: don't be afraid to be and become who you are. You are an expression and an embodiment of love. Blessed be.